Hello, everyone. It's Thor, and today we're going to be discussing the January 2023 predictions. But we're also going to be talking about what is 2023 going to bring on a global level as well, because we're having some really huge events happen in January. We're having Saturn actually change signs after 3 years. It's almost entirely been in the sign of Capricorn since January of 2020. So we are going through a huge collective energy shift in January, and we're going to see the changes that percolate all the way through 2023. And what I believe we're going to see happen with all of the collective financial market changes we're going to see, we're likely going to see the beginning of central bank digital currency and also, or some sort of UBI. So this is going to be so intense the next year. And it's much like childbirth. A lot of this old energy that's been around, we figured out a lot of things weren't working, especially, during what's been going on for the last 3 years, but also before that. And there's been this idea that things aren't working for everybody on a collective level. And that's what Aquarius is really going to be about when Saturn enters it on January 17th. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. I do Vedic sidereal astrology if you're new to my channel. So it's different than Western tropical astrology. Most people are familiar with their Western tropical sign when they read horoscopes in the newspapers. So make sure you're going to the proper calculator if you're trying to determine your Vedic sidereal astrology sign. My goal is 10,000 subscribers, and we're almost at 1,800 at the time I make this video. So it's really exciting. And also, if you're interested in your own personal private reading, check for details down below on how to get that. Basically, you just go to my website and there's always deals going on. So make sure you check that out. The disclaimer that I'm going to give is, make sure you check with a qualified financial advisor before making any financial decisions. Because sometimes I do make predictions where we're taking a look at certain planetary transits and we might see swings in markets, for example. So let's talk about some of the thoughts that I'm having for 2023, but also for January. I mean, specifically the month of January. So there's a global rebirth happening, and that's really what I want everyone to be aware of. There's a rebirth happening. We went through a collective dark night of the soul from 2020 all the way through 2022. This has been like a dark night of the soul. We've been processing a lot of pain. And what's been coming up in our collective reality as our collective karma has been a lot of, we've been dealing with a lot of things that are are not good about society. And so 2023 is going to be really about finding remedies for those situations. But in this birthing process, there's going to be pain. So I do feel like we are going to see some really big financial shocks in 2023, which is going to cause, in my opinion, based on the planetary transits that I'm seeing, government intervention. I believe we're going to see policies like the New Deal, policies that we haven't seen since FDR. If you guys are familiar with that history in the US, during the Great Depression, FDR basically came in with the Social Security system and made all types of big revamps to the economy, to workers' rights. And that's what we're going to see in 2023. All of those things are going to be addressed. Okay, let's go back to the chart here, our presentation. So a lot of the old energy, it's really a lot of the people that were the power brokers in the past are, they're trying to cling on the power onto this old model of, and many of you are familiar with this old model of everybody's on their own. It's this fierce individualism. We are heading more towards a collective type of thinking, with Saturn moving into Aquarius. So if we want to call that socialism, if we want to call it, more government programs, that's what we're really going to be doing with Saturn entering the sign of Aquarius, because Aquarius is about the common people. It's about the masses. So one of the things I was meditating on was this idea that, you know, things haven't been working for everybody. There's been a few people that have really benefited in the last few years. A very small percentage of the people have really reaped really large profits over the last few years, but collectively, there's been a lot of pain. A lot of people have lost their jobs over the last 3 years. A lot of people's businesses have shut down. So there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. So let me take us back to the presentation. Now we're going to talk about the specific transits that are happening for January. As many of you may know, Mercury is going to be retrograde for most of January. So that starts December 29th and it ends January 18th. And during Mercury retrograde, you want to make sure you don't make any important decisions like buying a car, getting married, anything where you're signing a contract. Make sure you're not doing that, because the decision making doesn't tend to be very good when you're in a Mercury retrograde. Expect all types of communication mishaps this month, especially until the 18th. Missed text messages, missed emails, miscommunications in any type of way, electronics problems. You may be calling your IT department quite a bit this month. It's basically going to be a bit of a pain in the neck for everybody with their electronic devices. Now, one of the things I want to bring up is Mercury is going to be retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is the ninth house of the natural zodiac. The ninth house has to do with gurus, teachers, higher philosophies, but it has to do with collective thinking, okay, and collective good. That's what the ninth house represents. The ninth house is really in stark contradiction to the 10th house. So if you count 12 houses from the 10th house, you get the ninth house. So the ninth house tends to be a dissolving influence on institutions like governments or institutions, corporations. The ninth house has a dissolving influence, but the ninth house represents pure truth, dharma. Okay. So that's where I feel like this Mercury retrograde, we're going to continue to see this dissolving influence on a lot of the old institutions that a lot of us have relied on for so long. And people are going to be collectively scratching their heads, just thinking, what is going on here? All these things that we thought we have trusted, all these things that we thought were so ironclad, well, they don't appear to be so ironclad. That's really what the Mercury transit's going to bring up. We're going to have this really large awareness that, all is not right in the state of Denmark, as they said in the play Hamlet. So let's go back to the presentation here. So that dissolving influence is happening. Meanwhile, one of the other big transits were happening in January is going to be Mars direct in Taurus on January 13th. Many of you remember when Mars went retrograde a few months ago, so it's been retrograde for a while. This Mars direct energy, it feels like, it's going to be in the natural second house. It does feel like it's going to be related to financial markets, and Mars can have a generally malefic influence. Mars is the planet of things being destroyed. It can bring a lot of havoc in situations. So I do feel like there's going to be a lowering of assets. And, we at the end of December, we already saw a big stock market decline. And I feel like that's what's going to be continuing to happen in January. We're seeing a lot of issues, and these issues are really going to be, we're going to realize that they're very systemic, that it isn't just some brief momentary type of issue, that this is really a system-wide type of issue. For example, we've been facing the inflation. We have a cost of living crisis in most countries of the world. So this is a very big systemic issue and a very complicated problem to really try to figure out what's going on here. So Mars direct, I do see some more, financial destruction essentially happening during that period. We also may see some more war provocations because the Mars energy, especially on the day it goes direct, Mars will be stationing, and there's this big release of Martian energy. So we may see some more provocations during the month worldwide. Now, the biggest event that I feel like is happening in January, my opinion is the biggest event is going to be the Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn is in anybody's chart is one of the biggest players because it represents heavy karma and it affects you on a personal level in your personal chart, but it also affects us massively on a collective level. So I consider Saturn, or Shani in Sanskrit, is the Lord of karma, really karma, and it's really reaping the type of reaping our past, reaping what we've sown. That's what karma, Saturn represents. So Saturn's going to be going into Aquarius. Expect huge shifts this month, not only collectively, but in your personal lives. You really want to see, where is Saturn going to go? What houses is it going in your chart, and what houses is it going to aspect in your chart? I am going to be putting out a video closer to when Saturn's going to be changing signs, where we're going to go through all 12 signs. So be on the lookout for that. But collectively, Aquarius represents the natural 11th house. This is all about networks of people and even financial markets like the stock market. So, second house of Taurus represents more the value of assets, whereas the 11th house represents the actual financial markets themselves. So, with Saturn entering the sign of Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius also represents things like the common man. Okay. So, this is definitely a collective issue. And that's why I feel like Saturn, being the Karaka for government, entering the sign of Aquarius, there's going to be a lot of government intervention within markets. That's why I feel that we may see the beginnings of this in January, but throughout 2023 into 2024, we're going to see massive changes in how we conduct business, the financial systems. We might see a financial reboot. There's going to be something where the financial system is going to, above all, even though it doesn't look fair right now, and it definitely isn't fair, Saturn is the planet of fairness. So, what Saturn's going to do is Saturn is leveling the playing field. Saturn is making things fair again. Saturn is the Karaka of hard work and seniority above anything else. Okay, so Saturn isn't the planet of who you're connected to and luck. Saturn is pure hard work and seniority. So Saturn is also only concerned about fairness. So Saturn is going to make changes to the financial system to make things more of a fair playing field. There's going to be a lot of people that disagree with what's happening. Okay, people that are really stuck in an older way of thinking, they may disagree with what Saturn's doing, but Saturn's going to be making those changes out of necessity. There really isn't going to be much of an option. Saturn is going to force the issue. For example, Saturn is going to create an issue where, okay, either this thing collapses or there's going to have to be an intervention and an injection of a UBI. So Saturn's going to force issues and force change to happen. That's really what we're going to see. We're most likely going to see some very pivotal karmic events in the month of January. And you're going to notice in your personal life, take a careful look at the changes you see in your life because Saturn represents those really big changes. Jupiter is going to be continuing in the sign of Pisces. So I do feel like this is an idealistic time for everyone right now. And I feel like collectively, we're going to realize that changes need to be made during this time. So it's going to become very obvious to everybody. Now, financial problems and financial market problems, I believe, are going to be strongly highlighted in January. We just talked about that. That's my predictions. I do feel like this trend that we saw at the very end of December with the financial markets having a bit of the meltdown, we're going to continue to see that trend. There's been problems happening over in China, and so the stock markets got spooked. I see more of that trend happening. And I feel like with this Mercury retrograde happening in the natural ninth house of Sagittarius, we're really having a big awakening. So, in there I wrote, people are watching the world in disbelief as they see the results of Kali Yuga. As many of you may be familiar, we're in a time called Kali Yuga right now. And a Kali Yuga is a lack of Dharma, it's the destruction of Dharma. And so during Kali Yuga, what happens is many people lose their dharma. They lose their moral compass. They lose their sense of right and wrong. And so people start following their five sense pleasures, and people start being operating primarily on greed, primarily on status, and things that are adharmic. Okay, so people become very selfish. And so that's what Kali Yuga is all about. There's so much selfishness that happens, and there's a lot of evil that arises because of this. Well, there's karmic effects. Whenever you're operating from an anti-dharmic stance, there's going to be negative karma you reap from not following dharmic code of conduct. So Kali Yuga is what's happening right now, but we're getting out of this Kali Yuga cycle. So new philosophies are being formed right now, and there's going to be new ideas for many of you that have read. There's a book out there called The Fourth Turning. That's a really important book to read. We're still in this fourth turning scenario until 2030. So we are still in the middle of all these changes. We're going to see governments actively involved in financial markets in 2023 and 2024. Okay. And we might see the beginning events this month. So that's why I'm bringing that up. We're going to expect New Deal policies being implemented. I do expect early signs of central bank digital currency or UBI programs coming up. There's going to be some changes because there's a cost of living crisis for a lot of the younger generations. So I do see Saturn's going to bring the remedies to those, whether people like it or not. Law and order is also going to be a theme in 2023, and we may see this in the month of January as well. Remember, I said Aquarius represents the masses. Okay. So there is this idea of collective unrest. Some of this negative economic fallout we might be seeing politically, financially, might bring up a lot of unrest. And so there's going to be Saturn represents government. There's going to be this idea of trying to maintain or bring back law and order into the system. So we may see a big discussion throughout 2023 in this idea of law and order and how do we address some of the problems that are a result really of what's been going on the last 3 years, and also just the economic policies that have been happening for so long where there's a lot of income inequality. So that's going to begin, there's going to be a realization that those things need to be addressed. So that's what I got for January. I think it's going to be a crazy pivotal month. We're going to see a lot of energy manifesting this month. So buckle up and get ready for that wild ride. Those of you that have an opinion on what's going to happen, let me know down below. Please comment. Let me know what you think is going to happen in 2023. Maybe you have a different opinion. Maybe you think it's going to get better, or maybe you think it's going to get worse. Let me know what you think down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.